Now. All right, we're here today with Coach Joe Norton. This is one of Coach Adams' all-time favorite people. I've known the guy for over a decade now. I was fortunate enough to wrestle with him on my team at North Central for 3 years, and then the poor guy was stuck with me in his corner for his senior year in college when I was coaching him before I moved on. So glad to have him. He was formerly the head coach over at Knox College, and he moved over to North Central, came back to his alma mater to be the head wrestling coach there. He's been there since 2014. And he also started up the inaugural season for the girls wrestling club this year over at North Central College. He had 5 All-Americans in his first season with the women's program, placed 6th as a team, first season ever. And, I mean, he's taking the whole team to a next level. He had 5 kids qualify for a national team this year in the men's program, and that's the most we've ever had. That's half the team going to national tournament. It's crazy. Unfortunately, that obviously got canceled right before they competed, but we had some high expectations for them. So we're going to have Coach Parton take over and be the MC for this interview. But Coach Joe, thank you so much for coming. Friend of mine and friend of the family, so thank you.
Yeah, man, I'm fired up. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Coach. Really appreciate you taking some time out to talk to us. Obviously, you know, COVID's kind of thrown a monkey wrench into everything. So we obviously wanted to bring the best in, pick the brains of everybody in the sport of wrestling just to try and continue to promote it. So we really appreciate it. So speaking of just, you know, kind of how have you been holding up during this whole pandemic?
Yeah, I've been getting antsy because I haven't been on a wrestling mat in a long, long time, but doing our best. We're staying busy. We're still recruiting, pretty actively recruiting. Still some 2020s and getting into the 2021s that will be seniors this coming school year. And a lot of ongoing conversations just with our guys and girls that are returning and making sure that they're staying on top of things and staying motivated. Obviously from a wrestling standpoint, but academic standpoint, how's work going? How's your family life going? So it's still a lot of working, even though it's, you know, from my office at home versus my office on campus. But we're still, working as hard every day, you know, as we would be if things were, you know, as they normally would be at this time of year.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, so just kind of walk us through, you know, obviously being local college, Division III, you know, so kind of walk us through what's a typical day for you.
Yeah. I'd say a typical weekday, I usually get into, if it's during the season, I usually get into the office 7:30 or 8 in the morning. On Tuesday mornings, we have some morning lifting groups that'll start at 6 a.m. Sometimes I'll trickle in for that. Our assistant coaches are always present for that. So sometimes I'm there for the tail end of that. But on any given day, I'm there, you know, by 8 a.m. at the latest. And I'm there, you know, through the end of our men's practice. So on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, our men's team practice from 4:15 to about 6:15. And then I'll head home to the wife for dinner on most nights. There are a few nights where I'll stay late and make some recruiting calls in the office, and I may stay till 8:30, you know, at night making recruiting calls and connecting with prospects. But, I guess a typical day is going to consist of obviously 2 practices a day, women's practice, men's practice. Depending on the day of the week, the men have strength lifting on Tuesdays and the women do on Wednesdays. There will be some conditioning stuff, but a lot of individual workouts take up my time during the day, watching film, juggling different, just hiccups that may come up in the day for our, we'll have about 70 wrestlers next year between our men and women's teams. So whether it's academic or a roommate thing or a social thing or a guy or girl that just needs help with something, I'm having conversations, either individually in small groups pretty much throughout the day. Every minute that I'm not in practice.
Wow, so that sounds like you kind of have your hands full.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but we like it that way. So we stay busy.
Keeps you busy. Yeah, definitely makes the days go a lot long or a lot smoother.
Yeah.
So, obviously you guys had the most national qualifiers in program history last year, and then obviously COVID hit. So, what kind of impact did that have on you and your team? Obviously it's not really, the best news to be delivering to your team as you're about to, prepare and head out. So, just kind of talk us through what was that situation kind of like from your perspective and then obviously with your team.
Yeah, it was it was crazy. It still, honestly, as much time has gone by, it still feels like a bad dream that you're just waiting to wake up from. We're going to wake up, on Friday morning at the national tournament and go ahead and compete. But yeah, it was the best regional we've ever had in terms of getting 5 guys through to the national tournament. We had another guy lose in the 3rd place match. So if you place top 3, you qualify. So we were that close to having 6 qualifiers, but 3 of them were seniors that had never, qualified for the NCAA championships before. So we were particularly fired up for those guys. 2 younger guys that, were seated, a freshman seated 2nd and a sophomore seated 3rd, both of them with real good chances of doing, a lot of damage, making the finals, I think, in my opinion. So, we were pretty fired up for that week and a half after the regional before leaving. So there's 2 weeks in between the regional and the NCAA championships. So, we were back on campus after the regional for a week and a half, and then we left on Wednesday before the championships that were slated to begin on Friday. So we got to Cedar Rapids, Iowa with those 5 guys. Got a workout in on Wednesday, got another workout in the arena on the mats. Everything was set up, ready to wrestle. I mean, the tables, the mats, the score clocks, all the NCAA, materials all around the arena. And we were actually in the coaches meeting on Thursday at about 3 p.m. When we left the coaches meeting is when the NCAA made that announcement. So, we had to bring those guys in and let them know, obviously, what was going on. And there was a lot of talk of it. The NCAA or the NBA announcement was the night before that the NBA would be canceling their season. And so I knew as soon as I saw that on Wednesday night, that we'd just be lucky to get this thing in, right? But it happened very fast. We had our women's nationals the week before, and there was no talk of the tournament not happening. That Friday and Saturday, March 5th and 6th. And then a week later, 5 days later, we were leaving Cedar Rapids without wrestling a single match. So it happened very quickly, and it was tough conversations with those 5 guys especially, but I think they've all handled it pretty maturely. The 3 seniors realize there's more to life than wrestling. It's time to go out and be a big boy and get a job. And the other 2, the younger guys that are coming back, are super motivated. I mean, they'll both be ranked preseason top 2 to start next season and be in the conversation to win it. So, they're right back on the horse, fired up, trying to win a national title in 2021.
Yeah. So kind of that leads perfectly into the next part. Obviously the stage just came out 2 days ago. The governor just announced, I know there's been talk. So, just kind of getting your thoughts. What do you think next wrestling season is going to look like?
I think it's going to be different. I mean, practices maybe have to be structured different. You hear a lot of different things as far as, limits on number of people in the room at one time, limits on, our sport, wrestling, unfortunately, we're going to be this close to each other face to face. And it's going to be hard to wrestle with masks on, right? So, I mean, you talk about things like cross country, golf, tennis, or maybe you're not right here with the people you're competing against, have less risk. I couldn't think of a sport, wrestling and football are your 2 that are right up there just with a lot of, contact between 2 people pretty close together. So, I think we're still hopeful that it's going to happen. There's going to be some changes, I think, and some hoops to jump through and some adversity to deal with. But I think that as wrestlers, we pride ourselves on our ability to do that. I think I still have a feeling the NCAA is going to push our season back. That hasn't been announced yet, but I think wrestling season this year, rather than starting in November and running through March, will probably start in January and run through May if I was a betting man, but that hasn't been announced. We're hoping to find that out soon. But I do think we're going to have a season, even if it's a shortened season, even if it's a little bit more regulated on what schools we can compete against or how far we can travel or how many guys or girls we can bring each time and put in a bus, in a hotel room. Things may be different, but I am optimistic that we're going to have a season that we're going to wrestle and that we're going to win. So,
yeah, I mean, with 2 guys returning, and then, you were talking a little bit earlier about some good recruits coming in this class. I think we're about to see some really big things from North Central coming up here in the next couple of years. So I know definitely a lot of us in the Naperville area, especially with, us being out of Naperville and me teaching at Equa Valley, we're excited to see, how that kind of plays out and how that goes from here. But, Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing we're all kind of worried about is just that uncertainty with, obviously the contact and everything. That's, I think, the biggest thing that we're all concerned about. And we're all kind of thinking like, all right, hey, how are we going to be able to adjust to this?
Yeah, we're going to do our best though.
So kind of getting into our part of the interview here where we kind of start to talk a little bit about you. So I know, one thing that wrestlers are pretty good about is some of us are very humble. So please, feel free to open up a little bit, let us know your background and everything like that. But why don't you just kind of talk us through, what your wrestling journey looked like?
Yeah, I started wrestling at a real young age. I actually was very resistant in getting into wrestling when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I have an older brother that's only 15 months older than me, so we're pretty close in age. But he's a lot bigger than me. I don't know how that happened. Right now today I'm 5'6", about 138 pounds. And my brother's about 6 foot. He's probably 215, 220. So he's a lot bigger than I am, and he always was growing up. And I loved basketball growing up when I was really young. And my brother got into wrestling, and he used to just come home and pummel me, just like in the living room. Like I didn't really, I couldn't fight back because I didn't know how to wrestle, and I was already smaller than him. And I know that I fought my dad on getting into wrestling a little bit when I was real young, but I think one day I just literally was like, I got to do this so I can at least defend myself a little bit in the living room. So that's probably why I actually kind of conceded and got into it 5 or 6 years old. But, wrestled all through IKWF. I actually quit wrestling, changed schools in 7th grade, and I quit wrestling and played basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was actually really good about it. My dad hates basketball. I kind of hate basketball. I think it's ingrained in our nature as wrestlers. You're supposed to hate basketball, right? Even if there's no real reason, you're just supposed to hate basketball, right? So my dad was actually pretty good about it. I think he knew that I was going to realize that basketball wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was the smallest person in my class, certainly the shortest person in my class. So I played basketball. I scored 8 points all season, which is not a lot. And quickly realized I need to get back to wrestling. So I went back to wrestling in 8th grade. And I never placed in the kids state tournament, IKWF, any of that stuff. I was close, a couple times in 6th grade and 8th grade. I was close, but never did that. And I went to Montini for high school, which is, obviously everybody knows Montini's a powerhouse program, but it was back then as well. I was a freshman in 2002, and Montini had actually won their first state title in 2000. So it was kind of just starting the rise of this thing, and my brother was already there. But I was about an 86, 87-pound freshman, and we had the state champ at 103 that year. So I wasn't cracking the lineup. So I was a JV killer, especially because there was like a 95-pound weight class, which was perfect for me, not having to cut weight or anything. And still couldn't even crack the lineup my sophomore year. We had a kid transfer in from out of state, won the state title at 103. So I actually didn't get to wrestle varsity until I was a junior in high school at Montini. I was a full 103 pounds by then. I might have been 105 on a good day. Mm-hmm. Qualified for the state tournament my junior year. Did not place, got close, but lost in the blood round to place. And then finally my senior year, I was primed to be a state champ. I was cutting a decent amount of weight, probably from about 120 down to 103. And there were only 2 classes in IHSA wrestling back then, 1A and 2A. So I was, primed to win it. We were 1A at Montini at the time, and ready to rock and roll. I was probably the favorite to win it going in. And just before the season was announced, that was the first year the private school multiplier thing went into effect. So Montini actually got bumped up to 2A with all the larger schools. So I went from being the favorite to win it to being a guy that was scratching and clawing to place at the tournament. So I think it was good for me because I think it kept me motivated. Like I had more to accomplish and things were going to be tougher. So I ended up placing at the state tournament. I took 6th my senior year, wrestling 103 at Montini. And, I didn't really get offers, looks from D1, D2 schools. I was pretty small, to be smallest college wrestling weight class is 125, and I barely weighed that, And so North Central was a good fit for me. I lived on campus, so it gave me an opportunity to get away from home, but I was still only, being from a kid that wrestled at Montini, I was only 35 minutes away from home. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was a best of both worlds kind of thing for me, where I got to go away, live in the dorms, be a college kid, but I wasn't across the country. Right. And it was a great experience for me. Adam Johnson was really the reason that I chose North Central. I tell everybody that. I don't just say that because you guys know him, but I was down to North Central and one other school, and he had me come over work out with him one day, kick the crap out of me, and I realized this is where I need to go if I want to get better. So I was lucky to have a 3-time All-American, one weight class above me, but he's definitely the reason I chose North Central.
I paid Joe. I paid you to say that. Remember?
I know he
I'll
did.
send you the check later.
Adam was a lot skinnier back then, so. But he was a big part of my developing, and I had a good college career, but not great. I was a guy that was, ranked in the country my last 2 years, but never got, to the national tournament to be an All-American. And again, I think that's something that motivated me. Mm-hmm. And I realized what my shortcomings were, and now I can use that, I think, to be a good coach and make sure that guys that are kind of in a position like I was, that have the ability to do it, aren't falling short for the same reasons that I did, in terms of things like self-belief, maybe having the right mindset going into big-time matches, stuff like that, where I think I fell a little bit short. And that's an area that I think our team does a great job of now. So graduated from North Central, became the grad assistant, got my master's in sports leadership as an assistant coach. And then I got to be the head coach, like Adam said, at Knox College for 1 year before they brought me back here to North Central in 2014. And struggled through 3 pretty rough seasons of not winning very much. Our dual meet record my first year was 4-9, which was not fun. This was my 6th year that we just finished up as the head coach. And the last 3 years, we've gone 34-8 in dual meets. So we certainly turned the thing around and started winning quite a bit, which I think is a testament to the leaders that we had on the team that really bought into what we were doing, and some of the assistant coaches that I have on staff. But it's been fun, and we're starting to climb now to where I think we can really, contend for national titles. That's all on the men's side. And then we added women's wrestling last year, and really had no idea what I was getting myself into coaching women, but just had a blast. We had 9 girls on the roster that were just hard workers, just killers. Some of them just make the boys look bad, how hard they really work even. But learned a lot about coaching freestyle and coaching women, and had 5 All-Americans on the women's side too. And our women's team will be, primed to be a top 3 or 4 team going into next year as well. Yeah. So that fires us up too.
Yeah. No, I know that's, it always helps when you obviously have, that group that finally it clicks with, and then you start to see those leaders in there. That's definitely something, as with coaching the club and coaching the high school, that we try and really promote to those guys that have been with us for a little while, that are getting a little bit older, and really trying to, it's nice when they can take the lead a little bit in drills or in the warm-up and practice. It's so much nicer, because then that starts to get the other guys to start to see how it flows. And I mean, obviously you can see it, and it's a testament to the coaching and to the kids as well, as that record starts to shift over the right direction, and as you start to see that change. So that's obviously something, we love having people on and getting those messages out there, because it continuously reinforces what we're trying to teach. And that's awesome. Definitely.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here for a couple of things. First off, Joe, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. I remember you wrestling your senior year specifically, because I was in the corner for every match. And, dude, you had the toughest national qualifier I've ever seen. All right? You beat so many All-Americans that year, you should have gone nationals. That's a shoulda, coulda, woulda story. We're over that. We're not even talking about that. You're right about the whole – what you did in high school or college kind of helps you coach. So I get you there. The other thing is, you're not giving yourself enough credit for the coaching North Central thing, because I know you're saying you got good leaders, you got great assistant coaches, and all that's true. But man, ever since you took over at North Central, they've taken some huge strides. Huge strides. Not to mention the fact that so you've been part of good teams. You've been part of North Central. You've been part of Montini. So my question for you is, what does it take to be one of the best teams? What are those teams doing differently at North Central, at Montini, now that you're national caliber team? What are you guys doing differently that other teams don't do?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think about that a lot. What are the things that our teams do now? And like I said, it's been 6 years that I've been the head coach. And those first 3 years were a little bit rocky, just from a wins and losses standpoint. There were more losses than wins. And the last 3 years have been a lot of fun. And I think the biggest shift was just in our team culture, how much the guys loved the sport, how much the guys loved each other. And those are two really, really big things. You know, Anthony Rank was one of our seniors that just graduated, did a podcast just the other day, and he said something that is absolutely true. The people that are best at anything in this world are people that love it, right? And that's not just wrestling. It's sales, it's football, it's teaching, it's anything in the world, right? The people that are going to be the best at that thing are going to be people that truly actually love it, and they do it because they love it, right? And I think we got a group of guys that love wrestling, but even more so, especially in an individual sport like wrestling, and we talk a lot about this in our program, but an individual sport like wrestling, it's really easy to be selfish and get caught up in yourself and what's best for yourself, because you're out there by yourself. And whether you win or lose is largely based on what you do. It's not the point guard that missed the three-pointer or the guy that struck out with the bases loaded or the wide receiver that dropped the touchdown pass, right? It's you out there by yourself is the reason you either won or lost. So I think wrestling, you know, as we grow up in the sport, kind of breeds that mentality. But what we quickly learned is that a guy that's out there wrestling for himself can be great. But a guy that's out there wrestling for 35 teammates on the bench that are going crazy for him, and 5 coaches that he knows are truly, truly invested in him and that he is truly invested in, is going to be greater than that guy that's out there for himself every single time. And so we really try and promote that. And I think this was the best regional we've ever had this past year on the men's side. And going back and watching it, there are 18 teams in our regional, and it's the most competitive regional in the country. And our guys for the semifinals were front row. First 7 or 8 rows were completely taken up by our guys that were not wrestling that day, that were all the way out in Iowa to support the 10 teammates that they had wrestling and banging on the rails and screaming and throwing stuff and going crazy. And we didn't have that when I first took over. We didn't have that love for each other and desire for your teammates to succeed as much as you want yourself to succeed. And that just elevated our level because guys were doing it for people other than just themselves, which I think naturally just raised their level.
Yeah, that is something throughout every year of wrestling. Anyone who's ever been around wrestling for a long time, you can just tell that there's a difference between a kid that's wrestling for himself and a kid that's wrestling for his teammates, and his family, and his coaches, and everyone around. You can tell there's a difference. So that is awesome. So I guess that, you know, we're going to jump around to questions, and I had one that kind of related to that one, because you talked about that culture piece. And as the leader of a team, you know, we're always thinking culture, and like, how do we build that? I want to be more of a team rather than an individual. In an individual sport, I mean, everyone thinks of wrestling as an individual sport, and it's not. So what do you do specifically? What do you do specifically as a coach? Any strategies you use specifically to kind of build that culture, to build that sense of community, to build that sense of family? Because I'll tell you what, I love talking to the North Central guys because I see them all over the place. And every time I talk to them, one, I'm looking for dirt on you, and I get some good stuff. But 9 times out of 10, they're always talking about how they just love being a part of the family, love being a part of the team. Like, they just love it. Like, so what is it that you do as a coach, or your coaching staff does as a coach, to help build that camaraderie, to help build that family and community?
Well, we do a lot of things together as a team outside of the wrestling room. You know, when we first needed to flip this switch and make some changes, we did a lot of like team building activities, like your cliche team building stuff. Now it's not as corny, it's not as forced because it doesn't need to be, but they'll have video game nights. You know, the team bus rides are, you know, we're playing games, doing things on their phones that they're like playing games together on the bus rides and stuff, or their Nintendos that they link together, like stuff like that, where they're constantly doing things together that are not just wrestling together, right? And I think that shows that they have common interests outside of wrestling, and that means that you put a group of guys together that are going to get along very well, right? You know, the other thing that I really wanted to do, though, was I always wanted to set a good example myself, right? And you know, there's nothing worse than a coach that expects you to get up early and be on time and work hard and care about people other than yourself, that isn't willing to do that himself, right? So I always try and set that example myself. I truly believe that there's not a coaching staff in the country that works harder than ours. And I say that when I have 2 assistant coaches that outwork me, right? Our head assistant who we hired this year, I had a previous relationship with his head coach where he had come from and called to inquire about him. He just said, man, this guy will run circles around you. And he was saying that knowing how hard I work, and that just fired me up, right? And so we hired that guy, and he's beating me into the office every day. And he's watching more film than me and doing more individual workouts than me, right? And that inspired me to be more like him. And as we're doing that together, that's inspiring Coach Mike, our grad assistant, to be that way. And I saw his level raised from his first year as a GA to his second, because he's trying to keep up with me, and I'm trying to keep up with Coach Cook. And then our guys are trying to keep up with us, right? And they're seeing like, well, my coaches are pretty good at what they do, right? So I'm just going to aspire to be like them. And if I want to be pretty good at wrestling, I'm going to work as hard at that as they do at coaching. And I think it just sets a good example for them to try and emulate. And, you know, some guys will always work harder than other guys, right? But the guys that are truly successful, I think, are guys that are trying to you know, keep up with others around them, right? And I think when we set that example from the top, you know, you get leaders that are doing that, and then maybe younger guys that are trying to keep up with those leaders, and it filters on down. So I think it's incredibly important to always set a good example as a coach or as an older guy on the team or an older girl on the team, because people will follow you, right? Especially once you start to have a little bit of success, people are going to emulate you. People are going to act the way that you act. So make sure that you're doing the right things and you know, setting a good example and practicing what you preach, right? Be on time, work hard, be a good teammate, be a good person, be a good leader, you know, work well with other people. And that's going to inspire other people to be that way too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. That is so true. I think everybody can kind of look, not even in their athletic careers or their wrestling careers or whatever careers they're in, they can look in their real life and they can find somebody that they try to emulate, right? And so, yeah, just that's good stuff. Good stuff. I don't know, Park, did you want to ask that next question? You want me to move on? I think I kind of had another question I thought would be good too.
Go right ahead. Keep jumping.
All right, so I mean, we're talking a lot about coaching and your wrestling background and stuff like that in North Central, and I want to get to the women's stuff, but there's one last question I want to get to that revolves around just wrestling and your college stuff in general as a college coach. I mean, North Central, it's becoming pretty big time, right? And you've obviously got, as a recruiter, like that's always been a big thing, is you have to recruit in order to bring kids in. And then once you bring them in, you just develop. And you build that sense of community and family that you're talking about. But recruiting is a big part of that. So you got a lot of kids on your team who are good and are real good and probably good enough to go wrestle for a scholarship somewhere at D1, D2, NAIA, whatever it may be. We recorded this video and we're gonna send it out to some high school kids too. And there's gonna be some kids on there who are watching who are kind of in the same boat. Like, all right, well, I want money. I want to wrestle for a scholarship. I want to go D1, D2, NAIA. Come on. I love North Central. I love D3. There's a lot of good schools and good education, stuff like that. But money talks, right? So what would you say to those kids? And what did you say to the kids that you have now, even, who are looking to get a scholarship somewhere versus going to Division III program like North Central?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's always the dream, right? Is to get a scholarship to wrestle Division I and be, you know, the next Jason Knopf, Isaiah Martinez, whatever, right? I remember when that was me when I was younger, right? When I was coming up, Cale Sanderson was coming through. So that shows I'm getting older now, I guess. But, you know, that's what it was. That's what you wanted to aspire to be and what you aspire to do. The first thing we try and never do is discourage a kid from chasing his dreams. Because who am I to tell you that you're not good enough to do that, right? It's hard not to get frustrated when a kid tells you that he wants to go D1 if you don't think he should, right? So you got to walk that line a little bit. But, you know, hopefully kids are honest with themselves and their parents are honest with them and their high school coaches are honest with them. But, you know, you do have to navigate those waters a little bit. You know, the first thing we had to do was create a culture, like we just finished talking about, that when guys come and do their visits, they see the guys on our team and how close-knit that of a group they are, and how they interact with each other. And regardless of how good they are, they want to be a part of that, right? Whether we're Division III, Division I, whatever. So we had to create that first. We had to create some incentive for someone that would have a Division I maybe offer on the table to choose us instead of that, right? When I first got here, there was no reason that anyone would choose us over a scholarship anywhere, D1, D2, NAIA, it doesn't matter. So we had to create that. We had to earn the right to get into the ring with those guys, right? And as we did that and as we started winning, then we were having those conversations where we could talk about, a guy coming here and being a program changer, being our first ever 4-time All-American, being our first national champ since 1969, being part of a program where, if you come to our alumni golf outing, there's 100 alumni, North Central Wrestling alumni, that just still have such a strong affinity for the program and so much pride in their alma mater that they come to dual meets. They talk with me pretty regularly, and they're giving money to support the guys and girls currently on the roster. So once you do that and you put things in front of them that are desirable, a Division I scholarship is desirable, but so is being part of a close-knit team. So is being a legend, regardless of what program you're at, right? Being a legend, wrestling for coaches who you feel truly care for you. And as soon as you show someone that they can have that, at this level as much as they can at the Division I level, then that's when you get yourself into the conversation, right? And then you just got to find the kids that are, you lose those battles a lot, but you got to find the kids that are, that are actually going to bite on that. And you swing and miss a lot, and as our team's gotten better, we swing and miss more and more because we're recruiting more and more of those kids. But you might throw that out at 10 kids that you feel like you have a good shot at. You might only get 1 or 2 of them each year, but if you do, those guys are going to be program changers. And we have a few of those now, guys that were state champs, state finalists, wrestled their way into scholarship offers and chose us over them. But it starts with obviously creating something that's attractive. That was the hard part, right? Now having the conversations is the easy part.
Yeah, I think when you get to a program that's at your level, you probably have to get more and more used to that. So that's a good thing. I think so. These are the Johnson boys. Jake, come here. You had a question you want to ask?
Yeah, I saw Jake in there. What's up, dude?
Say hi. You remember Coach Joe?
What's up, Jake?
Did you have a question you wanted to ask Coach Joe?
What? Can you face my daddy?
Can you what?
Can you face my daddy?
Can you beat up my
daddy at wrestling? Absolutely not.
He probably can. He's tough. Coach Joe is one of the toughest practice partners I ever had. All right, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to let Coach Parton take over. I'm not signing off. You can do your question next. All right, Coach Parton, you're up.
Yeah, this is usually the point he gets mobbed, so.
I know how it goes.
Yeah. So, obviously North Central has a women's wrestling program now too. And you kind of hinted at that a little bit earlier, but what was it like going through this first season? What were some of the challenges you kind of faced, starting that program up from the ground?
Yeah. What was it like? So much fun. Like, I thought it was going to be fun, and it ended up being so much more than that. It was just a blast. What were some of the challenges? Coaching women is different than coaching men, and this is my first time ever doing that. There's goods and there's good things and there's bad things, I would say. I think that women just innately want to trust their coaches more. I think I got less questions of why. I tell one of the girls do this, and I think they're more prone to say, okay, I got you. And I tell one of the guys, and a lot of times it's, well, why should I do that? Well, how long should I do that for, right? And what we learn is that the guys that truly just say, okay, sounds good, like the girls do, are the ones that truly end up being successful in the end anyway. That's one thing I really liked about coaching the girls, was just how innately, I think, more coachable they were from day one. Challenges, is freestyle. It was my first time actually ever coaching freestyle. I've wrestled freestyle. I'm a huge fan of freestyle wrestling, but it was my first time actually coaching it, right? I think that we did very well with it, but there were things that we learned. Thankfully, we had Coach Brittany join us, who was a 4-time All-American herself in college and a national champ with a lot of freestyle knowledge. Coach Cook, our head assistant, has freestyle knowledge through the roof. And Coach Mikey from Izzy Style was a university freestyle national champ. So, having those guys in the room certainly helped me navigate that. But I think I would, be remiss to say it wasn't a challenge to get into coaching freestyle. Understanding, girls' bodies are different than guys' bodies without getting into that too much. There's just different things you can do. from a strength standpoint, from a conditioning standpoint, nutrition and diets, how much weight they can cut. So learning those things was a bit of a challenge. But I would say, man, even coming up with that list of challenges is tough because the first thing I think of is fun. As far as like what it was like coaching those girls, so much fun.
Right. So, obviously the NCAA has now declared it as an emerging sport. So just for, those watching, can you just kind of give us a little bit of a explanation as to what that means?
Yeah. So the NCAA Emerging Sport for Women program is actually a few years old now, and there are several sports that have gone through it. I know equestrian, bowling have gone through it, women's triathlon, but women's wrestling is the latest. And actually Division II and Division III were approved for emerging sports status back in January. And Division I was actually just approved just a few days ago. So we're real excited about that. We'll actually have some Division I women's wrestling programs coming up here. But basically the way it works is once emerging sports status is granted, the way I understand it, and I'm far from an expert on it, but once the status is granted, that sport has 5 years to get to 40 schools that offer it, NCAA schools that offer it. Now that's total across all divisions, okay? Division I, Division II, Division III. And actually a school added today, Albion College in Michigan, which by my count was our 40th, which is pretty exciting, right? That doesn't mean that all of a sudden, boom, you're an NCAA sport. We have to go through a period where I want to say it's 2 years of maintaining a minimum of 40 before we'll get an NCAA championship. So I think we're looking at maybe 2022 or 2023 at the earliest that we'll have a true NCAA women's wrestling championships. And then from there, the sport can break off into divisions when each division gets to 40. Okay, so that 40 that we're at right now, I believe contains 24 Division III schools, North Central's Division III, 15 Division II schools, and 1 Division I school. So as of right now, we're all going to be together. We're all going to compete together. I believe that Division III will get there first. We're out in front right now, and I think there's more incentive for Division III schools to add women's wrestling right now from a tuition dollar standpoint. That I think Division III will be the first to break off and have their own Division III NCAA championships before Division II and eventually Division I. But we're excited for that. We're certainly going to get there. I think the wrestler and the competitor in me wants to get there now, right away, and start winning NCAA titles. But we know that we got to be patient with it. My true hope is that we have it by 2023 so that our girls that were freshmen last year for us in year one, they'll be seniors that year and they'll get to wrestle to be an NCAA champ. That's my hope is for those girls.
So, and I mean, obviously, the IHSA just sanctioned a girls' state tournament, and I think they were the 25th out of 26 states now too. So, obviously having the club and now seeing, over half the country starting to sanction it as a sport. What do you think the landscape is going to look like, in the next 5-10 years? How do you think?
I think it's going to grow. I think it's going to blow up, and I'm an optimist. But I think it's going to blow up. I know it is the fastest growing girls high school sport right now is wrestling. And I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon, especially as collegiate opportunities open up more and more, especially as scholarship collegiate opportunities open up more and more. So that's Division I, Division II, NAIA, right? That can give girls scholarships. There's going to be more and more incentive for girls to do it. But as we just see more exposure to it, 2016, Helen Maroulis was the first USA woman to ever win a gold medal in wrestling. So that just happened, right? Yeah. The last Olympics. It wasn't even a sport at the Olympics, women's wrestling, until 2008, I believe was the first one. So we're still kind of just playing catch up. When you think about men's wrestling, has been happening since the dawn of time. We're still just playing catch up, but I think we're getting to the point where word is out and girls are looking at it where, 10 years ago it was like, oh, you're a girl that wrestles and you have to be on the boys team and wrestle boys, to where, oh, we have a girls team and there's 20 girls already on it. I'll give that a shot. I think girls are going to be more prone to do it. And that just fires us up, man. That's exciting stuff.
Do you think they're going to switch over collegiately then to folk style, as more programs start to emerge and they start to break off, like you said?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so. And I hope I'm right when I say that. I know that in pushing for it to be an NCAA sport, The people at the highest levels of that, the Wrestle Like a Girl organization, I believe the NWCA is involved in that, have pushed for it to be freestyle. I'm a huge advocate for freestyle wrestling. I wish that we always wrestled freestyle from, and that was the only thing we did. I think we play catch up when we wrestle folk style through college, and then we get onto the international scene, and we're wrestling guys from Eastern Europe that have been doing it since 5 years old, and that's the only thing they've been doing. So I hope that we stick with freestyle for the women. I think that we will, and I think that we would be smart to, because I'll tell you right now in recruiting, and it's a question that we ask every girl that we recruit, do you prefer freestyle or folk style? 9 times out of 10 or more than that, 9.5 times out of 10, that girl's answer is freestyle. And so if what we're finding is that girls prefer that style, we would be wise to stick with that style, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, and, you were kind of part of the planning process. So to those that are watching that aren't aware, we are going to be helping start the Fox Valley Wrestling Club, as well as 4 other clubs in the area are starting to help up the West Suburban Girls Wrestling Club this year. So, just kind of, obviously being a head coach, seeing that the benefit of having that program, what advice would you have for any girls that are thinking of starting it, or any parents that are, maybe thinking of getting their daughter involved? What advice would you have about the benefits of participating in wrestling?
Yeah. Oh man, so much. I would say the first advice I would give parents is don't be afraid of it. We have a girl coming to North Central next year that will be a freshman for us. She's from California, and she wanted to wrestle. She had older brothers that wrestled, and she wanted to wrestle her whole life coming up. And her parents didn't finally break and allow her to do it until junior year of high school. And she actually made the California State Finals this year as a senior, which is crazy. Girls wrestling in California is far ahead of pretty much every other sport in the country right now. And if you ask your parents why, they say they were scared of her getting hurt. They view it as a boys' sport. It's a rough sport. And this is a girl that would tell you it changed her whole life, right? It made her a better student. In recruiting her, got a chance to look at her transcripts, and I said, your grades got better as a junior. She said, well, I started wrestling.
Yeah.
And it helped her obviously be a better student, but be a better person, be a more confident person. And I think it can help girls a lot in that regard. And there's something to be said about a person that will stand out there by themselves in a singlet, especially a girl, right? And there's so much, I think, confidence that can be gained from that, and self-belief, that it is tremendous for a young woman to do, even if she doesn't stick with it through college. A girl that wrestled for a few years in high school, the things that she can gain from that. I think there are a few other sports that can do that. Maybe swimming. There are a few sports that can do, the same things in regards to those things for a young girl. As far as advice, I would just say, find a club where there's other girls, because that girl is going to be more motivated to stick with it if she's not the only one every day. And that's when I was coming up, my whatever club I was in always had 1 or 2 girls, but it was always kind of like, oh, there's that girl, there's that one girl, on the team. And now if a girl walks into a room and she sees, 15 other girls just like her, she's going to be more prone to do that. She's going to relate to them, make friends with them more easily, and just be more prone to stick with it. So I think it's important that you look to where are girls seeming to enjoy it and stick with it, and get your daughter into that club, and then spread the word to others so that she has friends that join her, and then she'll be more prone to stick with it, I think.
Yeah. And that's going to be, and I will give Coach Adam full credit here for kind of being the brainchild of that too, to reach out to those other clubs and see, kind of get that support. Cause I think that's definitely one of the things, like you just said, that's definitely going to help our West Suburban Girls Club move forward, is that we have all of those people trying to promote that, and all those people trying to get their sisters involved or their friends involved. So I think, the larger the group, you're completely right. I think that's going to be one of the things that's going to help this boom. So I'm excited for that. I know Coach Adam is pumped, and we appreciate you being part of that process too.
Of course. And you guys did it the smart way. So you got 4 clubs that each may have, to start only 2 or 3 girls. And if you combine them all into, now you're looking at 12 to 15 girls, like I'm saying, that's just going to help promote, we have girls here. There are other girls here that do that, and they're going to be more likely to stick with it. So.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Coach Joe, he is a huge fan of girls wrestling, and he was in that very first meeting we had. Yeah, he sat down with a bunch of clubs via Zoom, obviously, or a phone conference in the area. And Coach Joe was integral in that process. So, Coach, we can't thank you enough for that. We're gonna get the ball rolling here shortly with the whole Girls Club stuff. But you kind of alluded to. We're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk more about advice for our wrestlers as a coach coming from you. But you kind of alluded to it in the whole why girls should wrestle, and kind of that mentality piece that girls wrestling, or any wrestlers in general, kind of gain an edge over other people. And that's that mentality piece, just that mental toughness. And, I know, like you said, I wrestled with you every day in practice for several years. So, Coach Joe is one of the most mentally tough kids I know. One of the most mentally tough people I know. So if you wouldn't mind, describe like how the mental side of the sport impacts wrestling. How it kind of transfers even past wrestling. And then how do you, as a coach, kind of coach the mental side of the sport?
Yeah, those are some really good questions. How does it it's so important in wrestling. Not just mental toughness, but like perseverance and resilience. And that can all be kind of put into that vein of mentality, right? But it's so important in this sport because this sport is so hard, right? Think about it. And as I use this example a lot with people, growing up, I remember when I was a kid growing up, it's like, let's go play basketball. Let's go play catch, right? Whoever says, let's go play wrestling. It's not something that you do for fun. I mean, kids roll around innately, in the living room when they're born, or when they're younger. But growing up, it's like go play a sport like basketball or football or baseball. Like it's fun. The stuff that we do, like beating the heck out of each other, running sprints, cutting weight, like it's not fun, right? I don't think you'll meet very many wrestlers who say that the main reason they do it is because it's fun. So I think there's some resilience that comes with it because it's tough, right? So I think naturally wrestling will ingrain that in you. And that's one reason why I think it's really important to continue to get our girls involved in it, because it can make a girl really, really tough. But how much does it have to do with the sport of wrestling? So much. So much. And you could be the most talented wrestler in the world. And we've had some of them, man, on our team that were just super talented, athletic, fast, strong, knowledge of the sport, but didn't want to persevere through adversity. Didn't want to do the workouts that were difficult to get them in good enough shape to be able to hang with when they run into someone that's equally as athletic or strong or fast as they are, except is in better shape, right? On the flip side of that, I've had a lot of guys that have come in with little to no athletic abilities. I mean, not very strong, not very fast, not very athletic, but they're so tough, and you get so much more out of those guys than you do out of the other ones, which is crazy because, that's the stuff that, the athleticism is the stuff that you're born with. That's the easy stuff, right? Being tough is hard, right? Being tough is hard, and battling through adversity is hard. How do we teach it? We like to present challenges for them. I like to present situations that are going to be difficult, right? My goal is to never break someone and make them quit, but I want to teach them to fight through things that are difficult, right? And that's not just wrestling. We talk about this a lot. That's life. The challenges that you face in wrestling may be difficult, but you're going to face challenges in your life that are equally difficult, right? In your job someday, as a husband or wife, or a father or a mother someday, right? And so we think wrestling can teach those things. But what do we do mentally? Yeah, we talk about it a lot. We talk about, coming in and always competing. We talk about coming in and always competing, never giving an inch, going down swinging every time, whether you won or lost. When you walk off the mat, we judge your performance based off the effort that you gave, more so than whether you got your hand raised or not. And I think as we talk more and more and more about that, guys and girls on the team start to realize, shoot, man, coach doesn't care if I win or not. Coach just cares that I didn't quit. Coach just cares that I gave every ounce that I had for that 6-minute match, 7-minute match, 10-minute match if it went to overtime. And that's easier to succeed at sometimes than getting your hand raised, right? Because you might wrestle a kid that's just flat out better than you and have a hard time beating him. But you're the one that decides whether you're going to quit and give up or whether you're going to keep going and persevere. And as we teach you to do that every single time, whether you win or lose every match you ever wrestle, we've gotten a lot out of you that will help you the rest of your life. And all those other things, working, raising a family, you know, all that other stuff. So we talk about it a lot. We present a lot of situations where, you know, we force you to get through adversity so that when you have to in a match, it's easy because you do it all the time. And we just talk about it nonstop.
That's awesome. I mean, I think as a coach, we know, like, it's nice to have good athletes, right? It makes coaching easy to teach stuff. And we know we have to teach technique. We know we have to show them wrestling moves and stuff like that. We also know, like you mentioned earlier, the culture piece is super important. You know, that mental side is super important. I think the difference between the good coaches and the great coaches, those good coaches know how to coach wrestling. They know how to teach moves and stuff like that. The best coaches know how to teach the mental side. The best coaches know how to be strategic about the culture piece. And that is hard. That's the hardest part. So it's super good to hear. It's just awesome to hear from someone who's been there, done that, and is doing that kind of stuff. It's good to hear advice on for us of how we go about tackling those things, the culture piece, the mental side. Because you have to do it. If you want to be a good coach, if you want to have a good team, you have to do that stuff. And so it's nice to get some ideas. We might steal like 12 of those. So thank you. All right, Parton, you're up, brother.
So, you know, obviously part of the challenge of coaching wrestling in general, but also with the youth is, you know, and I'm guilty of this. Coach Adam's definitely guilty of this. Self-admittance, he's guilty of it. You know, there's the Rolodex of moves that we kind of go through and think about, and, you know, but obviously then when you're trying to teach the sport from a young age, we really harp on, you know, being really, really good at a little and then expanding as you get older. So I just want to kind of pick your brain a little bit here and just what, in terms of a series or a particular series, or just in general, you know, what should our guys be focusing on? And then, you know, what do you think really by the time they get into high school and then even moving on, what is something that they should probably have mastered?
Yeah. Well, I love to hear that you guys had that philosophy because I think that's the way to go. There are hundreds of thousands of wrestling moves. I don't know how many, way too many, right? And I think a lot of times we focus on like all these different things and we're watching all these different technique videos and we're trying to teach these things in practice or go to the next camp where we can learn, you know, Logan Stieber's this or David Taylor's that. When in reality, you have to find 3 or 4 things that you're really, really, really good at and get so good at them that nobody can stop them, right? It doesn't really matter what those things are. I have my advice on what they should be, you know, but I have my own style and things that I'm good at, right? You know, Ben Askren got to the point with his cradle where everybody knew Ben Askren was going to try and cradle you, but good luck stopping it, no matter what, right? You knew what was coming and guys couldn't stop it. Same with Cale Sanderson in that ankle pick, right? And some of these guys that you see now, Jordan Burroughs with that reattack double leg, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, what we tell our guys is let's focus on 2 or 3 or 4 things that we want to get really, really good at and just become unstoppable or as close to unstoppable as we can at those things. You know, we really, really, really talk a lot about single legs in our program. You know, every year, year in, year out, you could run the statistics on takedowns at the NCAA Division I championships, and the most takedowns are going to start off of a single leg or something that initiated as a single leg, right? Mm-hmm. As far as offensive takedowns, every year that statistic will hold up. You know, that being said, we have a guy on our team that was 3-time finalist and IHSA finalist in high school, state champ, and will end up being a 3-time All-American for us. Was a sophomore All-American this year. That shoots a right-handed high crotch. I shoot a left-handed high crotch. I don't think I've ever shot a right-handed high crotch in my life. I'm that guy's head coach. He has a right-handed high crotch that is unstoppable. Mm-hmm. And even to the point where, you know, going into his first round match at the national tournament that got canceled this year that we didn't get to wrestle, the opposing coach was saying to us afterwards, like, we knew we just had to stop Cody's right-handed high crotch. And Coach Cook, our assistant, say, yeah, good luck. Everybody knows that. Nobody can stop it, right? Because he's gotten to the point where he's so good with that right hand that everybody knows it, and he's still going to take you down, at least 2 times. So you better take him down 3 if you plan on winning the match, right? So he just found something he's really good at and just got better and better and better and better and better at it, to the point where it doesn't really matter what it is. Now, I would advise that it's a leg attack, on your feet, that you're not just going out slinging, headlocks and lat drops all day.
Yeah.
And right. Unless you're really, really, really that good at it. But I think you have to get at least one leg attack that you're really, really, really good at. If it's me, it's a knee pull or a sweep single. And getting the guy's leg in the air and getting him hopping on one foot. Because the way I always explain it to our guys is when you get a guy's leg in the air, you're going to have the advantage because you're on 2 legs and he's on 1, right? I love to always put it that way. Don't overcomplicate it. Just get physical when you get that guy's leg in the air. So that's my recommendation, but that's where I'm good is from a single leg, right? But on top, I think you got to get good with, one thing that you can hold a person down with and threaten them from a near fall standpoint, whether that's crossbody, rise with a leg in, whether that's, a wrist or a tilt, or even not even necessarily legs in from a base, but getting him flat on his belly and getting a leg into what we call a high thigh. Have one thing on top that you can threaten people with, right? And then get really, really, really good at. And then basically as far as on bottom, I don't care what it is, just be able to get the heck out. Don't be that guy that has a deficiency on bottom, because I was that guy for a while and I lost a lot of matches because of it. I had to figure it out. And we've had a lot of guys come through our programs that, that was their deficiency, and some never figured it out, so they never won a lot. Others, as soon as they figured it out, it was like, holy cow, I'm a really good wrestler all of a sudden because nobody can ride me, right? So I think you got to find one thing on top that you're really, really good at. One, at least leg attack, on your feet that you're really, really good at, and just be able to get the heck off the bottom. And if you can do those things, even if you don't have 5 different things on top and 5 different leg attacks, you can be really, really good in the sport.
Definitely, and Coach Adam and, all of our coaches at Fox Valley, and the same at Nequa too, that's big on what we preach, is just very little be very, very good at. And then, obviously as they get to, you in your room or any other room at that next level, that's where it starts to expand more and more and more. But because that confidence is there, that's huge. So we have a question from one of our wrestlers. Colvin, you're up.
Now, I don't know if Colvin's actual video is or his sound is working. Colvin, is your sound actually working right now, or should I ask the question before you?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you.
No.
All right. Hey, Coach Joe, this is Coach Jim. He's one of our coaches, and Colvin, who's one of our wrestlers. Connor actually loves wrestling.
All right. I'm glad you how old are you, Colvin?
Oh,
6, turning 7.
All right, cool. What's your question, bud?
Can you read that?
No, I can't read it.
Montini was a legendary program. Was there a specific technique that was taught at Montini that you felt the Montini program did better than anyone else?
That was definitely Colvin's question. All Colvin.
Boy, was there a technique? No, I wouldn't say there was a technique as much as there was a mindset. Now, I have an arm drag setup that I still use to this day, that I remember the day that the assistant coach at Montini taught it to me, and just like a light bulb in my head, like, this is really good. And I try to get a lot of our wrestlers to use arm drags because it works very well for me, and some of them it works, and some are like, coach, this ain't gonna be my thing, right? But I'll have that always to pass down, and I still use it to this day. I'll always be able to get every freshman in our program with it at least once before they figure out that it's coming. But I wouldn't say that's a program-wide thing. That's one thing that I took. But I would say it was more of a philosophy, which was get so, how do I phrase it? It's volume of attacks, and get so good at finishing from every position that as long as you get on a person's legs, even if it's not a clean finish, you're going to work your way to a position because you've been there so much that eventually, whether it takes 5 seconds from the initial leg attack or 30, eventually you're going to get to a position in all of that that you're more proficient in than your opponent, and you're going to score, right? So if you have a high volume of attacks every day in practice, repetition, and you're in each position more than your opponent is going to be, then when you get to that position, you're going to have a leg up. So you'll see a lot of Montini kids, and this is still the case at Montini with a lot of them, they'll take shots that maybe aren't the best shots. And you're like, where's your setup, kid, right? But he knows he just has to get on that leg. And even if it's not a clean finish, it might take 25, 35, 45 seconds. But eventually he's going to get to a position in there that he's been in more times than that other guy, and he's going to score. So I think that volume shooting philosophy, that always trying to score philosophy is something that I took from them, more so than a specific technique or a specific move. Does that make sense?
A higher proficiency in the scramble, you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Colvin. That was a good question.
Thank you.
All right. Next question. So we're at the point. I got one more major question for you. You want to do it? All right. We're gonna ask some questions from the kids, Joe. And Connor, your former ring bearer.
Connor was the ring bearer in my wedding. What's up, Connor?
Connor has a question for you.
What's your favorite trophy?
What's your favorite trophy?
What's my favorite trophy? That's a good question. So I think I have two answers. From high school, my favorite trophy is my team went to, my Montini team went to the Disney duels, which are duels down in Florida in Disney World. And I went 11-0, and I won an award called Technician of the Tournament, which I never considered myself a very good technician. So I think what it showed me was that I don't give myself enough credit. Right. So I have that award back at my parents' house. I think it's got a lot of dust on it now. I haven't seen it in a while, but that's an award I'm very proud of. And I would say, though, that's got to come second to my favorite trophy is our rivalry trophy with Elmhurst College, where every year when we duel them, they're the Blue Jays and we're the Cardinals. So we have a trophy called the Battle for the Bird's Nest. It's got a bird's nest and a cardinal on one side and a blue jay on the other. And whatever team wins gets to walk out on the mat and hold the trophy up and take it home for the year and then bring it back for the dual meet next year. And when Coach Adam and I were in college, we used to go back and forth with Elmhurst a lot. And since we created the trophy now, they've never won it. The trophy was created 3 years ago. We've won the last 3 years, Connor. And guess what we beat them by last year? 46-0. It was a lot of fun. So
Who had 46?
We had 46, the Cardinals.
All right. Great question, Connor. He loves the trophy questions. All right. And then we had another question from a guest that I can't find him here, but I'm just going to ask for you. He says you wrestled 103 your senior year in high school, but then had to jump to 125 in college. Can you tell us a little bit about what that leap was like as far as both recruiting, the muscle stuff, and your weight management?
Yeah, good question.
In general, this 120, 103 to 125, what was that like?
Yeah, it was a very welcomed jump. I know I talked earlier about being like an 86-pound freshman. By the time I was a senior, I was cutting from probably 122, 123 on my fatter days down to making 103, and it was just tough. I remember lying to my dad every day. What do you weigh? I'd take 3 pounds off the top. So if I weighed 111, I'd tell him I weighed 108. Eventually got to the point where he knew I was lying, so then I had to lie by even more, right? So don't lie to your parents. That's a bad idea. But it was such a brutal weight cut that I was actually at one point, I didn't tell this in my story earlier, where I did not want to wrestle in college. I was just so tired of cutting weight, and it just beat the heck out of me mentally and physically, cutting that year to 103. That I think it was the coach at North Central that told me, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. You weigh 123 pounds. You're going to wrestle 125. It's going to be great. So I think it was welcome to not having to cut weight. Even by the time I was a senior in college, I might have been getting up to 31. So really not much of a weight cut. Now I'm a 32-year-old man that I still weigh like 138 pounds. So I could probably make 25 in a pinch now still. But, what was it like? It was challenging because everybody was stronger than me. But so when I was wrestling 125, Coach Adam was wrestling 133. If you believe that, it's true. He did wrestle 133. He weighed that at some point.
I still weigh 133. Like,
Yeah.
Right. 133.
So Coach Adam was my primary training partner for those 3 years that, we were on the team. And even once he was my coach after that, we trained together a lot. But especially those first 2 years when I was really small for the weight class, I don't think even wrestling 25, I was ever, I was wrestling Adam in practice every day, and he was so strong, and he was already an All-American by the time I got there, and so physical that, wrestling him in practice every day kind of just makes everybody else, almost seem weak, especially a 25-pounder when Coach Adam was a 33-pounder and he was as good as he was. So having that practice partner is probably what allowed me to be as competitive and just have a mindset that, it wasn't, oh man, this guy's so much bigger and stronger than me. It was, oh man, this guy's not as big and strong as Adam, so I can do this, right? So I think that's something that certainly helped me a lot, for sure.
Thanks, Joe. You're making my head get a little big over here. You did kind of talk about your parents a little bit, and how you don't lie to your parents. That's great, and that brings up my last question. I've known Mama and Papa Nortz for the last 15 plus years now, and I know they are your biggest cheerleaders. And I have had several heart-to-heart conversations with both of them, especially Papa Nortz, about like you and your brother Tony growing up in wrestling and stuff like that. And those rivalries in the living room, I've heard about those many times too. But my question for you is, can you explain the role your parents played in your whole wrestling career, and maybe give some advice to us parents, me as a parent, Coach Mike as a parent, Coach Jim, Coach Hoger, everyone else is on here, and even just the parents in general who are watching, because there's a lot of parent coaches, but then there's just parents who are just here to be part of it. Any advice that you have, and any guidance as far as what your experience with Papa and Mama Nortz?
Yeah, my parents were great because they were from the jump. They were always very supportive. My dad wrestled, and he always wanted me to wrestle, and I have those memories are so vague. And a lot of what I remember is them telling me, how reluctant I was to get into wrestling. But I know that they wanted me to, or at least my dad wanted me to, but it was my decision. Ultimately, it was when I finally said, Dad, I'm ready to do it, right? So I appreciate that, I think, but they were always super supportive. And I remember times of seeing, being at an IKWF tournament when I was younger, and seeing like a kid's dad, has him in the corner up against the wall, just yelling at him, because he lost or he didn't do something right. My parents never did that. And my dad was in the Marines for a long, long time. And so my dad can yell with the best of them, right? He's one of the louder people you'll meet, but never yelled at me, whether I could go out there and do the complete opposite. My dad was my coach. He was on our IKWF coaching staff. I could go out there and do the complete opposite of what he told me to do, and he would be furious about it. But if I came off the mat, it was good job. If you lost, we're going to win the next time. If you did something wrong, hey, remember, we want to do this next time. So I think he did a good job of supporting me in that way. My mom was at every single meet. My mom knew nothing about wrestling before she met my dad. And IKWF on Sundays, you got to miss church to go to the tournaments. And I know Mama Nortz wasn't happy about that in the beginning, but we'd have to go to church on Saturday night, so we go to tournaments on Sunday. But they were always just super, super supportive of it. I talked about quitting wrestling in 7th grade to play basketball because I was an idiot. I know that just tore my dad up, but it's, yeah, sure, give it a shot. I think in his own arrogant way, he knew I would hate it and come back to wrestling, so he didn't have to fight me on it. But, he just wanted to support what I was doing. And, now I'm an adult with a wife and a college wrestling team, and they're front row at every single dual meet, right? And they're the most supportive parents that I could have asked for. And I think that was really, really, really important, because no matter how I did, I knew that in my parents' eyes, they were going to be happy with my performance. Even if I got pinned every single time out, and I got pinned a lot when I was younger. I think that was really, really, really important. I also don't think my dad ever pretended to be something that he wasn't. He coached me, but he wasn't he wasn't Cale Sanderson. He didn't have all the wrestling knowledge in the world. He certainly knew more than I did as an elementary school kid, but he surrounded me with good, coaches and good practice partners. He put me in good clubs. He took me to good camps or sent me away to good camps to where I would get exposed to good coaching. And then he'd be there for me mat side, but there were a lot of things that I was able to learn that maybe he wasn't able to teach me or didn't have the skills or knowledge to teach me at the time. And I think that was really, really good as well.
Dude, that was perfect. It's funny because we're conducting this interview series, and we keep hearing kind of the same advice coming back and forth, not just for the kids and for the coaches, but for the parents as well. So, I mean, that's the biggest reason we wanted to do this is with this whole pandemic stuff going on, it's hard to connect with our kids, and I mean, we want to learn from the best. And you're one of the best, man. You're at North Central. You're doing an awesome job over there with the girls program and the guys program, and so it's awesome to hear some of the same things that we've kind of thought about and tried to move forward with, and we tell our kids and we talk about our coaches. It's good to hear that from the best. So we're doing some things that are similar to the best, but we're also getting some awesome ideas from you too. So
yeah,
that's really all we got for you, Coach Joe. I appreciate you making it on. You're gonna have to stay on for a little longer. I'm gonna tell everyone else to leave, so then I can heckle you for a while. But no, we appreciate you coming. Best of luck during this pandemic stuff. Good luck next season with the girls and the men's program. And thank you for all you had to share with us today.
thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm excited to get Fox Valley Wrestling Club out and the new girls club out for some of our dual meets. We'll have, assuming our season is regular, as we're hoping, we're going to have 4 men's duels at home and 3 women's duels at home. So we'll get you guys back out like we did last year for sure.
Awesome.
We'll be there.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
will be there. All right. Everyone else, thank you so much. Pardon, you can stop recording.